Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. I'm here with my co host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. It's good to see you, hon. So today on the Franchise Woman podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Steve Seidel, TEDx and keynote speaker, founder of the Seidel Agency, and co-founder of Gents Journey. Steve has dedicated his career to helping leaders discover their story, lead with vulnerability, and build authentic communities, including his own Girl Dad adventure. His philosophy, connection as currency, has never been more important. And today he'll share how that mindset drives impact for leaders, businesses, and people that we serve. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Tracy. It's an honor to be here. Rebecca is my sister's name, so it's very close to the heart. And I was raised by several very independent and powerful women. And as a girl dad, female leadership is imperative, and I'm here to support that and be an ally. So thank you for having me.
Well, you're on the right show. You're on the right show
Perfect.
because we love women and we love women in business and we love supporting them. So, you've had an interesting trajectory in your life. You've worn many hats. You've been a speaker, you've been an agency founder, you've been a podcast host, and the co founder of Gents Journey. So, what originally inspired you to move into this idea of storytelling and connection? How did that whole process work for you?
Well, thank you for asking. And I think I'll be brief, but I think in order to fully understand, we typically need to go back to our childhood. They say more is caught than taught. And so growing up, I was raised in a divorce relationship. My mom and my dad split, and my dream became to be a very powerful and, successful father. That was the most important thing, is like I wanted to be a dad. My dad was there sometimes he wasn't. But prior to that, my great grandmother came over from Poland. They almost sent her back to Poland because her sister was not there. And so she thought on her feet like an entrepreneur does and heard somebody speaking Polish. And fortunately, this kind soul, this gentleman brought her into the country. Had that never happened, I wouldn't be here. And then my grandmother lost her husband at the age of 35. She worked with the Navy. And so she had to raise my mom and my aunt by herself. Previous to that, when she was a young girl, she worked and made alcohol during the Prohibition just to help her mother keep the lights on. And so, having been raised by these strong, independent, and entrepreneurial females, I saw the value that we can bring to the table. And to me, it was about connection. I was caught as a people pleaser. Now I call myself a recovering people pleaser. And so, to me, it was all about connecting, and that's how I would solve situations. If there was a fight, I would try and connect, be empathetic, and speak to individuals. And so, as I grew older, my mission was always to do good, give back, and make an impact. And instead of searching for validation and searching externally, I had to turn inside and obviously love myself, connect with my community, and connect with those that I love.
Oh my God. Everything that you're saying so resonates with me, and I'm sure with so many other people who are listening. So, did you ever have a defining moment in your life that maybe caused you to reevaluate, the trajectory of your life?
Sure. I mean, I've had several defining moments. I've been let go from three different jobs. I was an engineer out of college. I let go. I took a left-hand turn and I became an actor and an entertainer. And then, I ultimately worked for an agency. I was let go again, and then I started my own agency. And then during that agency process, I replicated the way that I built it similar to another agency. They were an outsourced CMO, and then I created the outsourced, or actually, I should say virtual CMO. This is pre-pandemic, about 5 years before the pandemic. And so I was virtual. And then we all know about the pandemic. That was really paramount
Yeah.
in the way that things structured it and switched. During that process, I found out how important connection truly is. We used to work with companies that had charities or socially conscious components, but then we saw we were disconnected from the world. We had to find other ways to connect, whether it was through ourselves, through our families. And then my mom got sick, And ultimately, she had cancer. I became her caretaker. But then I really realized how important connection was as I was running my business from my laundry room, caretaking for my mother, and trying to rebuild my agency. That's when I, created a men's collective because I knew that there was a void in my life. I had nobody to share my stories with. I had nobody to connect with. And too often, people don't have these communities to support them like you're creating right now. So I created it myself.
Wow. And especially during, like you said, during the COVID period where many of us were isolated. And even today, many folks have continued to work remotely and they're not in those offices and connecting or going back to the churches they've gone to. They're even now today, much more isolated than ever, right? So, address this connection is currency piece. Um,
Sure.
and how you develop that, how you teach that. Um,
Sure. Thank you for asking. So one of my clients is a gentleman by the name of Darren Spicer, and I talk about this in my TEDx talk. I lost my mom, and I had a three-step process that I went through grief. There's obviously various stages, but for me to turn that hidden power of grief into something of growth, it was imperative for me to reconnect. That was the first step. The second step was to rebuild some relationships. And lastly, it was reclaiming my power, my purpose. And I know you guys talk a lot about purpose. My
mhm,
agency, we do PR and media. I like to call it purpose relations. So one of my clients was unhappy. He was disconnected. He was working for an aesthetic client. He worked in aesthetic medicine. That's how I initially got my business started. I work with a lot of med spas and solopreneurs if anybody's out there is in that field, but he felt disconnected and he loved coffee. So he said, look, I'm going to create a coffee company. And so we've been with him. His company is called Clutch Coffee Bar. From one location, they're now to 20 locations. It's a franchise. And he lives in California. But he decided that the Carolinas were where he really wanted to dominate. So if you're a franchise owner, obviously the riches are in the niches, but really being specific in terms of who you're targeting and how you're delivering them benefits. And so connection as currency, his three principles in the way that he creates his company is they focus on the customer, they focus on the community, and they focus on the culture. And that's something similar that what we do as well. When we work with organizations, I look to deliver not only a win-win, but a win-win-win. And when you can connect to your culture or your company and make sure that you have that alignment, then people will never work a day in their life. If you connect to your community, which Tracy is amazing at, then you can provide value for them and have that socially conscious component where that 1 + 1 = 3. You have synergy there. And then lastly, I want you to connect to your calling, or I want you to connect to what your ultimate
mhm,
purpose is. And so when we work with companies, we make sure that they are connected with what they truly love and want to do. Obviously, there's Venn diagrams we can create between skills,
mhm.
passion, as well as, your unique assets. But that's typically the way that we function. And I'll start with your mission. Then we'll work more towards your message. Are you truly connecting to your message? Is it simple enough that people understand your value? I help with Y. I help X do Y so that Z, there's an outcome. And then are you connecting to your media or your community so that you're delivering the value to your community? Your core audience is crucial. You want to speak exactly to them. And then lastly, what we really want to do is we want to build movements. So when we work with Clutch Coffee Bar or we work with Noodle Lane or various other franchises, we think about your origin story, why you, what is that unique message, how does it differentiate yourself, and then how can we bring people on board to not only become ambassadors like Swifties do or Beyonce's Army or whomever you are, but how can we leverage them to really build a movement? And that's where that impact and that connection as currency pays its dividends.
It's
That's
about
amazing.
storytelling, right? It really is
Yeah,
about
Yeah.
storytelling.
yeah.
Sure.
Um,
We're your hero. What I say, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. When you're running an organization, there's somebody that's the hero in your company or your franchise. Who's it going to be? Make sure that you determine who that is, and we need to highlight them and tell their story. And nowadays, it's all about authentic storytelling. There's content creators. We don't want to think that it's AI, especially as deep fakes and AI and all this content comes up. We really want to see as organic and real as possible. There should be a face to your name and your brand. so that users can connect to it. And then secondly, you are the hero of your journey. There are ups and downs, like George Leonard in Mastery. You will have your ups and your downs. Be transparent with that, but at the end of the day, give them something to believe in. Give them something to fight for.
For sure.
So that's an amazing process that you created. Um, when we were first talking, you mentioned something about in your earlier days when you were younger, you went through some kind of training program at Disney.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and some of the things that you took away that maybe you use now, like intersperse in your practice with your brands?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. I was telling a friend, and I talk a lot about the 20-year plan. I think people too often in today's present day, they want it here, they want it now. Think about, most people plan for the 5-year plan. I say 20. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of the things that are now coming to fruition, it's taken me 20 years. One of them was
Wow.
1998. I was in Penn State. I was an engineer. My parents convinced me to go to school for engineering because I was good at science and mathematics. But yet I didn't have the passion of being able to express myself and being creative. And that's where it came later in life with my agency, where I take the left brain and the right brain, where we have the storytelling aspect, but also the analytical perspective so that we make sure what we're doing works. But at Disney, this was 98. This is before a lot of what we see in today's present day even exists. They had merchandise, they had albums, they had soundtracks. A lot of the philosophies that they put in place, everybody copies today. And so with them, I mentioned it earlier, synergy of 1 + 1 = 3. That was something that I learned at Disney. Another thing that I learned at Disney is obviously everybody is treated, be our guest, be our guest, be our guest. We want them to feel like it's home, it's family. And so sometimes people say customers, sometimes people say consumers. If you think about it, it seems a little clinical or a little clerical. And so making people feel a sense of ownership, that they're part of the community. I learned a paramount number of things when I was at Disney, and I still apply them today. I have a close friend. I'm actually excited. I'm taking my daughters to Disneyland for the first time in 3 weeks. And so I reached out to all my old friends from the college program because at the end of the day, it's story, it's magic. In my TEDx talk, I talk about everybody loses something, but once we lose something, that is a teaching moment for us to turn it into something greater. And too often we overlook that. And so Walt Disney, he lost his mom, much like I lost my mom 3 years ago. And if you look at a lot of the stories that take place within Disney, you'll see that there's a loss of a parent, a dad or a mom. And then that's what really allowed him to see how important it was and to separate ourselves 18 inches from our head into our
Mm-hmm.
heart. And then we love, then we have feeling, and then there's storytelling, and then we share it, and then we all feel like we're part of that magic. And we all have the magic within us, and stories allow that magic to really come to the surface.
Let me tell you where my brain's gone, Stephen. This storytelling, whether it's to movies or videos on LinkedIn, whatever it is, requires a certain level of vulnerability, especially if you're talking about grief. Do you find with clients you work with that they don't want to get to that level of vulnerability, or they think they should be presenting a strong exterior, and that embracing this level of vulnerability and sharing it is difficult for them?
That's a great question. 100%. I think I don't want to make a mass generalization. Certain people understand the power. There's individuals like Brene Brown, obviously who speaks, to a lot of females demographic. They know Brene Brown. If it's somebody who went to Harvard and it's an older white male who's 55, 60, that's the biggest shift that we've seen in my men's group, Gents Journey, is we see a difference in masculinity or the way the modern male or leaders embrace vulnerability. So for certain individuals, it does take a little bit of coaching and work and seeing what's effective, and that's where case studies come to example, or just showing some of these leaders that, hey, just try it. If you don't try it, you'll never know. But that's where it comes back to, if you're a franchise owner, we want to know your story. We want to see your story. We want to believe in you. And to go to one of my clients. Her name is Lane. She owns Noodle Lane. Previously, I was an actor, and so to go back to connection, one of my acting mates, his wife started this Noodle Lane in Brooklyn 13 years ago. It was during Smorgasbord, which is like a regular festival, but then they opened their first brick and mortar, and they hired me to help them do so, and we were their PR agency. And I talk about purpose relations. And her story was so genuine. She watched her mom and her dad cook while she was in China, and she took a lot of these recipes, and she never wanted to be on camera, and she never wanted to be videotaped. But yet, once we dug deeper into her story, and she was open and vulnerable to do that, and showed pictures of her as a young child, we ultimately got her onto Fox 5 in New York City for a 5-minute segment dedicated only to her business that was broadcast throughout New York City, the biggest market in the
Wow.
world in United States. And now she's sold out and she's opening another restaurant in Manhattan, and the new one is in Park Slope. And so I have to showcase examples of that. But also, if you're following the trends, word of mouth marketing is the most effective form of marketing. We all know that. But right now, it's social media. That's word of mouth marketing. And so one of the things that we do is we talk about, it's called a mind movie. So I don't know if you're franchise owners or you guys are familiar. Are you familiar with Canva?
Yes, of
Sure.
course. Mhm.
Yeah, so Canva is a really great tool. In lieu of visualization, often people who are owning franchises, they have dreams and they have aspirations. Sometimes we don't know how these dreams are going to come to fruition, but we need to believe in them and take the first step. Action begets motivation and gets you moving forward with momentum. So we work to really identify what they look like. What are some of the obstacles that are in the way of that? And then there's something like a mind movie that you can use where you come up with images. Where do you foresee yourself? What does your family look like? All of those things. Put them together within a Canva video. You put together music behind it that inspires you, that makes you feel great, that you get psyched to listen to. And then you watch that video every morning. So in lieu of an affirmation, you watch this video, you get fired up. Your mindset is obviously the most important thing to your success. It's those limiting beliefs that are weighing us down. So we want to remove those limiting beliefs. And too often, those leaders, to get back to your question, that don't want to do videos or don't want to be vulnerable is because they are limited by those beliefs that usually came from when they were a child or, a certain experience where they didn't feel enough or they were less than.
I think
So
that's so true.
d- does everybody have a story? What about somebody who, had grew up with both their parents in the house and they were the sports star and, like just this white picket fence, perfect life. Like, does everyone have a story?
Everyone has a story. Everybody has a story because that's the DNA of what we are. The life that we live, there's a story that's taking place. What I tell my daughter is to live in the now. Yes, be present in the present moment because when we go to the past, we start basically conjuring up a lot of these emotions. But the past can be helpful for you to go in as a tool to look at what happened, what shaped you, what are the experiences. So everybody has a rite of passage, whether it's going to high school, being made fun of as a bully, whether it's having a brother or a sister that picked on you, growing up in the picket fence, but people thought that you were really rich, but really you weren't, or there's always going
Mm,
to be a story associated. And when we can really dive into that story, especially franchise owners,
mm,
usually franchise owners come from a different field or a different industry and feel like, oh, this is totally different. I don't want to talk about it. But when you're able to bring that story into to the adoption of your new business venture, that's when it becomes real. That's when people can see themselves in you. We work towards building a mirror so that others can see themselves in you. And those stories of indecision or pivoting or restarting or getting laid off or typically a lot of the stories of franchise owners come from their childhood. They went out to get ice cream. I used to go to Friendly's growing up.
mm.
Every time I see a Friendly's when we're away on vacation, we have to go because I used to love to eat their hot dogs on that little like charbroiled bun that they would have. So it's those types of things that, we can tap into as franchise owners or just individuals.
So I want to backtrack just a little bit, Stephen. I love what you say about connection equals currency or is a primary form of currency. So this idea of connection, how does one create that community, that connection, whether it's with a franchisee and other franchisees or in their own community? This is a big part of what you do, and whether it's with your marketing firm or it's with your Gents program, Gents Journey. I know that's really hard for me to say. I don't know why, but I love it.
Yeah.
So, how do people build those connections and build that community? What are some advice that you might have?
Sure, that's a great question. I think connection to me is similar to influence, impact, sales, marketing. At the end of the day, we're wanting someone to feel something so that we can impact them. For me, it's all about positively impacting them and leaving them better than they found them. And so that's why when I talked about socially conscious, but when somebody's looking to connect, it goes back to what Tracy was saying, the story. Why? What are your whys? Why did you create this company? Why did you invest in this franchise? Why do you get up every morning? What are those highest commitments? And then working from there, what is that message that you want to deliver and show? Because like I said, I think I mentioned it, more is caught than taught, but um, so that way when you're delivering that message that people can work with you or invest in you, that's where the connection comes. If they can learn your story, they can connect to your story. So then they can invest in you. They can vote with their clicks. They can vote with their time. They can vote with their dollar. That is connection. That way there's obviously money being transacted, but it's connected through purpose. So that's when purpose leads profit. And then lastly, with the community, making an impact in your community, it may be hard for some individuals to find it, but I would go back to what do you love and what are you passionate about? And so I'm going to go back to Clutch Coffee Bar. One of the things, we do a multitude of things. Every time they open a new store, we have a blueprint that we've built. I'm happy to share it with your franchise owners as well. But one of the things is when we open a new location, we want to find a local charity, somebody that we can work with and do a proceeds day and show that we're committed towards giving back. We give back to first responders and making sure they are felt, seen, and heard, giving them complimentary coffee. In addition to that, Darren and a team are very passionate around sports, as am I. We mentor our university students, and so we work with local youth sports so that we can give out gift cards. They have a program called the Clutch Coffee Player of the Week, and so this is something, especially inspiring young individuals to perform at their top peak performance and know that they're a 10 out of 10 and have that confidence. That's crucial because we're going to be empowering them. Whether or not they come and get coffee, it doesn't even matter. But at the end of the day, we're positively impacting the community. So we're all going to be living at a higher vibrational level. But they do the Clutch Coffee Player of the Week. They give them a $5 or $10 gift card and they post it on social media. And these kids, they love it. And for them, it's that sense of acknowledgement. It's being felt and seen and knowing that somebody believes in you. And so there's a multitude of ways that you can do it. I think if you're running a franchise, figure out what are the local organizations that are nearby that you can vote with your dollar and support. And then what are some of the passions that you like as well. And then you can create one, maybe a sample program. There's another company that we work with. It's a Pi 5 franchise owner. So he's doing a painting night. It's kind of like where you do wine night and you learn.
Mhm.
You're doing a special night where anybody can come in, they can paint, they can learn about creativity and be empowered. And then, sure, you'll have a slice of pizza. Hopefully, you'll remember us when you come back. But if not, you had a great experience. And so, right now, the trend with AI is experiential marketing, and experiences are really starting to come back around. So, give them an experience that they can remember.
So, Steve, you're definitely speaking our language with all of this community involvement. I have a question pertaining to your Gents journey.
Sure.
Because a little while ago, you mentioned the word tool. Do you have any tools that you use within Gents journey to engage the members or the people that attend?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think everything in life is a school. You see a lot of different types of school. There's always going to be a tool that's needed, and a tool is something that needs to be utilized with a human. So that's where AI is simply a tool, and that's where these soft skills of communication and connection are really important. And then for us at Gents Journey, I started this company when my mom was sick. I relocated my job and I had no employees because we were virtual. So I was lonely. I needed something. And so to go back to this connection, sharing your story is probably the most important thing that you can do. And it could be in a counselor, counselor session. It could be on social media, or it can be in a group. And so for us, it was these group sessions where men could open up and realize that vulnerability was invincibility. The more vulnerable we could be, the stronger we would rise. Rising tide lifts all ships. So we created something. It's called the Journey Deck. And this is a deck of cards. So after 4 years of meetings, we kept seeing the same questions coming up over and over again. And we thought, wow, this would be a great tool for leaders, HR reps, or anyone who's just wanting to connect on a deeper level with their wives, colleagues, their children. And so each each card deck, and I'm going to go back to magic when you talked about Disney. When you see a card deck and somebody goes like this and they say, pick a card, what do you guys think of?
Magic.
Magic. And so
Yeah.
to go
Magic.
back to Tracy, to go back to Tracy as well, and she was like, does anybody have a story? Yeah, yes, everyone has a story, and therein lies the magic is your story. And so usually what we'll do is I'll take this to fatherhood initiatives, rehab facilities. There was a tattooed man who'd been in and out of jail about 5 times, and he was asked the question, who do you have to forgive? And he cried and he said, I
Mm.
have 2 kids, and I get goosebumps every time I share this. And he said, I need to forgive myself. And it was the most powerful experience that I've ever had. Um, I should say ever had. I have children, but it was very powerful. And I would love to see if you guys would be open to answering one of these questions.
I would,
Okay, so tell me when to stop.
right there. Yep.
Okay, this is a good one. And so this tool, when you asked about, we also have other tools as well, but I think this is a really valuable one because it's like an icebreaker and you're holding the card. The question is, what's keeping you from becoming the best version of yourself?
Oh, that is such a good question because you mentioned earlier that you used to be a people pleaser. And I think there's part of me that's still a people pleaser. So instead of doing something that I need to do for myself, I might get pulled back into something that my adult child needs from me, or something that, somebody else needs from me that they should and could be doing themselves. And then there
Yeah.
I am, people pleasing, losing time working on what I want to work on for myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can empathize 100%. It's like somebody you want, and then that's time away from you being at your highest version of yourself or delivering an impact or doing this amazing podcast
Yeah,
to help other people. And so I've struggled with that myself. Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
You want to
Thank
do
you
one,
for
Rebecca, or are
asking.
you good?
Rebecca, go for it.
You ready? We'll do one for Rebecca.
All right. Stop.
Oh, this one's kind of deep. Maybe I'll what?
Oh no. For a Swiss person that likes to be guarded,
Okay, I'm going to give you a
Which,
backup one while you think about it. What truth do you choose to ignore?
da, 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 da,
I
da.
think the truth that I ignore is that I really do have unlimited potential. It seems like every time I move in a direction and a lot of big, big, big things happen, I sabotage. So I haven't fully embraced this idea that it's unlimited what can be created and what can happen. It's always, nope, that's it. That's all I deserve, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I agree 100%. That's the hardest. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I'm the same way.
Yeah,
We limit ourselves, and
yeah,
that's where, look at Jim Carrey. He wrote a check down to himself for $1 million and he cashed it 10, 15
Yeah.
years later. And I think too often we're in that mindset. And that's where, when we're coaching, that's where we're writing it all down. When you write it down and you build that life by design, another activity we do for some of your franchise owners is to write a journal to your future self a year from now of what you really want to happen. And then that it helps it really begin to take shape. It's like GPS. We don't need to know how we're going to get there. Just put
Hmm.
it out there so that it can begin to take shape.
wow.
For
Stephen,
sure.
can you tell us what your podcast is about?
So right now I have a podcast that I'm working. I have 5 award-winning minutes, but the podcast that I have right now, it's actually I did a podcast about my college roommate's father, and this was he was an FBI agent, and he busted the biggest cocaine dealer to come through Philadelphia, and
Wow.
and it was a true crime podcast that I worked to go back to what I mentioned earlier. I learned about this story in college in 1998, same year that I went to Disney World. And there were two books written about it. And for 20 years, I tried to get this made. I had the rights to both books, and then they got squandered. But eventually, I was able to put together a podcast around this. It's called Wolves Among Us, and it talks about individuals in our world that live a double life. And
Mm,
it has 5 million downloads. I was able to get it partnered with Odyssey, which is a
mm,
publishing company. And so, to speak towards what we were talking about, our greatest beliefs, I wrote down, there were four things that I wrote down, and it took me 20 years. One, I wanted to buy an Audi car. One is I wanted to sell a TV show. Another one, I wanted to write a book. I did all of those things in the past 3 years, but now the podcast is being developed into a TV show. Peacock just gave us an offer, and so it'll be a scripted TV show that's being developed.
wow. That
Amazing.
is quite an accomplishment. You've done
Yeah,
so much and you're doing so much.
thank you. And
Very nice.
my biggest regret is we were working on, not a regret, but I was working on it when my mom was sick, and I can remember being in her hospital room while she got to hear the first episode. It wasn't quite polished, but I really wish that she were here to be able to experience all this. But I do know that she's looking down from above, and that's where to all these other business owners or franchise owners, you might have lost somebody as well, and use that as inspiration to really
Mhm.
deliver your biggest
Yeah.
wins.
She's looking down and blessing it on top of it.
Yes,
For
thank
sure.
you.
For sure. It's interesting how all this weaves together, Stephen, this vulnerability, this authenticity, and how we can build community and connection by having a greater purpose and sharing in a greater purpose with others, which is what creates that community. And honestly, it creates the culture of our businesses at that time too. And then this whole idea that all of that can be wrapped up into a wonderful story or stories that can be told to promote initiatives you have or businesses you have, etc. Um, so if you would walk away, meaning our audience would walk away with one thing, what is the first piece of advice you would give a company?
So typically when I work with organizations, like I said before, I go through mission, message, media, movement, and it all starts and ends with story. And
Mhm,
so we need to be clear about your values, your beliefs, making sure that
mhm,
you have these things written down, or unless you're a solopreneur, what are your mission? And so that we are a compass to guide to make sure that every decision that we make is governed by that. And we
yeah.
move
Mhm,
and then we move forward from that. And as an individual, whether you're a leader or maybe somebody who's working as part of your team, I think really understanding that, like you said before, your potential is limitless. What I talk a lot about is being great, and it's an acronym. The G stands for grateful. The R stands for reflective, having that self-awareness. The E stands for ethical, doing what's right. The A stands
mhm,
for accountability, so that you are accountable. You do what you say what you do. And then lastly, the T is transformational because we want these experiences that are going to transform us and leave us feeling better or leave us functioning at our highest capabilities. And so, as a company or an organization, set those beliefs, set those values, make sure that those are the governing compass so that you can be great. Have these check ins. But lastly, I think to speak to what Tracy was talking about before, like I mentioned in my TEDx talk, the hidden power of grief, we're all going to have these teaching moments. They don't happen to us, they happen
mhm.
for us. And so realizing that these are happening for us for a reason, and then ultimately share your story. It's up to us to share the story. And once we share the story, we get rid of the monkeys off our back. We open up and we're vulnerable. And then other people can be inspired and empowered by your story to help you move forward.
Steve,
Yeah.
what's next for you? And I don't mean the TV show, I don't mean professionally. I mean you as a person. You seem to have so many layers and you're so complex. What is next for you?
It's a great question. So for me, I'm approaching 50 and I like to call it the third act or the back nine of life. So I have a young daughter, two young daughters. And so what's next for me is really leaning into my legacy. And that's when I work with these business owners and thinking about, how can we leave a lasting legacy? And so for me, it's about speaking and sharing my story and hopefully inspiring others to be the greatest version of themselves. And so with Gents Journey, I'm focusing a lot more on the male demographic because I see a huge opportunity there, especially in today's techie world where there's young gamers who never leave their house. So I'm putting forth this intention and this mission that I can inspire the next generation of leaders that maybe know only the video game headset and the headphone, and inspire them to get outside of their comfort zone, realize their greatest potential, and then begin to start living their own lives so that they too can share their story and build their own lasting legacy.
Legacy. That's what I'm working on also. I wish I would have thought about it 30 years ago because I'd be a lot
Right?
right. But at this
Yeah.
place in my life, legacy is what I'm thinking about, whether it's for my children, my business, or the community that I have in the world of franchising. It gives to me a greater purpose. What is it I want to happen when I'm long gone, and how is it I want to make a difference? I think that's important for everyone to consider. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure people know how to get hold of you, Stephen. How would that happen?
Sure. I'm on social media and my username is at Stephen, and that's Stephen. My last name is Seidel, so Seidel. So at StephenSeidel, or at the Seidel Agency, TheSeidel Agency. And my websites are stephenseidel.com, theseidelAgency.com. And then lastly, if you are someone who is a male, or you're a caretaker, or you have a challenge with opening up and being vulnerable, I would strongly urge you to check out Gents Journey. And that's simply at Gents Journey Co. And our website is gentsjourney.co. And you can check out these cards. We have videos, we have we basically break it down into 7 pillars so that you can be the optimal man.
I love it. So
And
this,
then I have one more thing too for the franchise owners. We spoke about authenticity. We thought our goal at the Seidel Agency is purpose relations. We want to elevate you as a change maker to the highest pages, stages, and publications. And so part of that process is A, understanding your story, and then secondly is taking that expertise and sharing that knowledge. We can't take it to the grave. And so when I talk about sharing your story, that's crucial. So I have a lead gen form of 4 platforms where you can get free publicity for your job or your organization. And then there's one bonus as well, which is a podcast platform that you can use. So if you go to the Seidel Agency/media, that's TheSeidel agency.com/media. You can download that form and you can begin being booked on podcasts, shows, you name it.
That is so cool. And it's a nice offer for our audience. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. And like I said, it is so important that we have female leaders like yourself and we level the playing field. So I'm grateful for the opportunity and I'm here to support.
as you know, Stephen, our audience is about 80% women, but I can promise you behind those leader women are some powerful men that will benefit from this message. And those women are going to be telling their husbands and their boyfriends about what you're up to with the Gents Journey. So thank you for coming on the show today. We really appreciate your wisdom and for you carving out time for us.
Thank you again.
And Tracy, over to you for final words.
Oh, I have so much to say and so little time to say it. So first of all, Stephen, you are just a breath of fresh air, a pleasure and a delight. You know, you talk a lot about vulnerability and authenticity, and it's, excuse me, and it's very clear that you walk the talk and talk the walk and all that. So I'm definitely going to order some Gents Journey deck cards for the male CEOs for the companies that I coach. I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be great. And you said something really interesting earlier. And I think that this is really like the crux of a lot of the messaging that I'm taking away. You said coming from happiness, not for happiness. That was incredibly, incredibly powerful. And I really hope that our audience embraces that concept. Again, You're amazing. You're creative. You are super inspiring. And if you lived in Florida, we would be besties.
Awesome. Thank you.
Love it. Thanks again, Stephen. Thanks, Tracy. And thanks to our audience for listening in. Make sure to like, comment, share this interview with Stephen Seidel. And of course, we'll see you on next week's episode of the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged.